Big Mountain has some opinions on the PAC and the Mountain West.
Conference realignment and expansion is always in the news. So we're back on the Big Mountain to break it down for you.
Hey, good to have you here on the mountain. I am JY, and this is my good friend Steve. Steve, I listened to the beginning of the Canzano Wilner podcast that they do. It is entertaining, but they started with the PAC-12, and they got into some Mountain West conversations. I'll be straight up clear. This is coming directly from them, but I want to add our opinions onto some of this because some of what you're hearing from them is starting to sound a little bit more like the Big Mountain, Steve. Mm-hmm. So they started off with that Wilner thinks that the Mountain West and PAC-12 scheduling agreement will continue into 2025. We've been saying that there's really no reason they wouldn't do that. It's a win-win for both sides. He said that he doesn't see anything happening in this next 6 to 9 months regarding the PAC-12, finding a new home, rebuild, anything like that, which means, hey, they're going to need a schedule for next year, so that's what they're going to do it. I would say 4 to 6 months. They don't have 9 months to figure things out. We heard last year the AD saying, hey, we kind of Thanksgiving's our drop dead date. That's when we need to know what the heck is happening. And believe it or not, Thanksgiving's 5.5 months away right now, Steve. So they don't have a lot of time. Why would you create more headaches when you have something figured out for this year that can easily be extended into 2025? So I absolutely think that's what's going to be happening. And Wilner said basically the same thing. Canzano then said he thinks there is hope with the Mountain West Conference that there is a reverse merger, and I know you hate that word, but a reverse merger, and that they do want the PAC brand, they being the Mountain West. He then went on to say that there is some tension because of the Mountain West offering this olive branch in terms of a scheduling agreement with them, kind of helping them out. Mm-hmm. But the OSU and WSU are still saying they don't want to accept relegation. They don't want to accept a G5 conference, if you will. He expects that the agreement will continue as, again, it is good with both sides, as I said earlier. Wilner said that there's also some tension to the whole poaching penalty. And the amount of poaching penalty, and we're going to get to that here in a minute, because he says Canzano then says he mentioned that he had a conversation with Commissioner Gould, the new commissioner of the PAC, about the $65 million from the settlement that they're receiving. And she said, and we have talked about this in the past, but she's saying that this settlement money, the $65 million, is being set aside for potentially a rebuild or the future of the PAC. He also mentioned that to a Mountain West president. He had a conversation off the record, I guess, ish, with a Mountain West president. This whole idea of a potential rebuild and that $65 million. The response from the president was, well, that pays for 4 Mountain West schools. So to me, I just, again, believe, and I'm beating the drum. For those of you that heard our episodes before, you've heard us say this. There's nothing that leads me to believe the Mountain West Conference and its schools are just in lockstep right now. I mean, that response oh, that gets 4 of our schools is kind of well, good luck with that. You're not getting us, right? Or you're getting all of us or none of us type of thing is kind of how I read into that. And, people still, I hear all of this. They're going to take the top 6. They're going to take the top 6 or maybe 8 or I've said it before. I'll say it again. I don't see it happening. I don't see them taking 6. I think 6 is an awful number for both sides, both with the poaching penalties, with what would happen to those schools. They need 9 to dissolve the Mountain West. I've said before, I don't see that happening. I don't think they get 9 out of 12 schools approving a dissolution of the Mountain West. I think they're too united right now. This whole idea that Canzano said that they want the PAC brand, I don't know. That's opinion. I haven't seen anything that makes me believe the Mountain West wants the PAC brand, other than people coming up with this value of the PAC name, which we've talked about before. Until you get through all the expenses that they're going to have in litigation in these 2 bridge years, there's certainly not a nest egg left anymore. I mean, they don't have the funds. So other than the name itself, I'm not really sure why you want to do that. And quite frankly, to go back to the beginning when Canzano mentioned, there's some tension where WSU and OSU doesn't want to feel relegated. Well, I hate to tell you, if you're going to take all the schools into a reverse merger, into a merger with the PAC, you're at the same freaking point anyway. So what are we talking about right now, Steve? Like, sometimes I feel like we're talking in circles.
Yeah. You ready for me to chime in?
Chime in.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go back. I like to repeat themes, recurring themes.
Yeah.
So first of all, in Canzano, he's talking to a lot of people. He's not going on the record and saying which president he talked to and whatever. So I want to first of all just go back to what the decision makers at the highest levels say on the record in public, and none of them have said anything really like what Canzano's saying as far as that there's any stress between them, that there's any problems, that there's any issues, and really the decision makers in the PAC have said they see a lot. They've said yes, we're going to look at every what they call Power 4 opportunity. Okay, so they've been clear on that, which makes sense for them to at least look at what their options are. But they've also talked about both the Mountain West Commissioner and the decision makers in the PAC that there is a lot. They like the regionality of a partnership. When they started talking about this scheduling agreement. So. I like a little bit. I would say I agree a little bit at the beginning with what Wilner and Canzano were saying as far as it makes a lot of sense for that scheduling agreement to go into 2025. Yeah. Now that we have the schedules out, I think schools are probably excited. Schools and fan bases are excited about these matchups. And as we start to play them and everything works really well, I think that basically, in my opinion, the schools will get even more comfortable with that. And I agree, it's very likely that they'll move that scheduling agreement into 2025. Here's the thing, and this is why the wording about the merger bothers me. Okay,
yeah.
Because I think there's certain people, whether it's OSU, WSU fans, whether Wilner and Canzano are like cheerleaders, PAC cheerleaders, whatever. But then there's also Mountain West fans who are on guard a little bit. We had what's our friend Jim, and he's on guard a little bit.
Absolutely.
So I think people use words to kind of hurt each other or to show their position as being stronger than the other. Yeah. And so that's why they use this reverse merger. Right. What does it matter? Yeah. At the end of the day, if we get through a season or two of a scheduling agreement and everything is working and there's no Power 4 opportunities for Oregon State and Washington State, at the end of the day, if the two conferences come together in some kind of agreement, all the teams, whatever they want to call it, reverse merger, sideways merger, whatever, it doesn't matter as long as if that's the best thing for the schools, they come together and work something out. And I think that there are certain people that they're having hard times coming to grip with reality. So they want to use these different terms and say, well, we're not just going to merge. This is going to be a reverse merger. Right. And then fans
because
on the
we have the power. Yes. We're the better conference.
Right. And then the other fans on the other side who are also kind of on guard are like, well, they're not going to poach us. Yes, and they use the word poach. They use these words, right? Yes, to kind of
relegation. We're not going to relegate to you, and you're not going to poach us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I agree with what you said there as far as I don't think there's no possibility. I don't see a path forward, a viable path forward of the PAC just taking 4, 5, 6 teams from the Mountain West. Mm-hmm. If they do this, I think it's going to be all or nothing. Yep. Now, I will say, when I say all, I think there's one school that might, and they would have enough money to kind of pay that school off. Yeah. The one school, well, there's 2 schools one that I have a concern about is Hawaii. Right. Just doesn't make a ton of sense. There's not a ton of value, and I don't want to piss off any of our Rainbow Warrior fans, but there's not a ton of value with Hawaii. They're football only. The games are a strange time. So that's one I could see if they wanted to push somebody out, maybe they would do that. And the other, you mentioned this a long time ago. I've heard, and I've kind of just kept my ear to the ground. I've heard rumblings of Air Force possibly wanting to go over and be in the same conference with Army and Navy. I think that's the AAC. Yeah. Not that they're looking to leave the Mountain West, but if there was a bunch of turmoil, that it might just make natural sense for them to. So those are 2 schools. But other than that, I think it's an all or nothing approach. that most likely, again, unless the Big 12 or the ACC extend those offers to Washington State and Oregon State, we've seen nothing so far that suggests that's imminent at all.
No. Just clickbait on the internet. Yes. That's it.
Everything looks like this will be some kind of a joining, merger, collection, and however they bring and if they do that, they should look at hire marketing people, whatever, to come in. Okay, what's the best way to brand this?
Right.
Should we stick with the PAC name? Should we stick with the Mountain West name? Should we do some kind of new branding that's a merger of the name? I had suggested out there the Mountain PAC, whatever. I'm sure there's some smart people that could think of something. It just everything to me seems natural. It seems on this progression. Now, we'll see how this season goes. But if we have a lot of awesome games that are generating interest and everything works out well, I think you'll see more and more just them coming together and coalescing. And I think, like you said, Wilner and Canzano. Yeah, they're finally coming to that realization. And yes, are there some people that are kind of on guard and like, well, we're not sure yet? Yes, there is. That's the whole point of having this scheduling agreement. Yep. Let's work out through this season, see how it goes, maybe do a second season, and see. And again, we've talked about this many times. Let's see what the state of college football looks like in 2025, 2026, where I think it'll be even more evident that there's a power to and everybody else. So that's my thoughts.
And just remember, the poaching penalty goes through 26.
Yes.
So it doesn't end with the scheggling agreement. It's 1 year past.
Right.
I mean, so they are really
protected themselves.
Protected their conference. This being the Mountain West.
Yeah.
So there's nothing there that, again, I've said it before, I'm going to keep saying it until I see something that shows me otherwise. To me, they are lockstep together on this, and we'll see what happens. And to your point that you just made, towards the end of this segment, Canzano brought up the merger, and he said he still thinks it's on the table.
Yeah.
And I went, on the table? That's kind of like vanilla.
Yeah.
Wilner, on the other hand, I think has been watching the Big Mountain, because Wilner's chimed in and said he thinks it's likely. I mean, he was very confident, like, it's not on the table. It's likely this is what's going to happen. Forget the reverse, the this, the that, the blah, 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 blah. He thinks by 2026, they will be merged together in a whatever you want to call it. Again, like what the Big Mountain has been freaking saying for forever.
Yep.
So Wilner's on our side now. Canzano said on the table, and he said it kind of tongue-in-cheeky, kind of like, I think it's still possible. And that's kind of how he said, it might be possible. It's on the table. And Wilner's like, no, it's likely.
Yeah.
Like, so anyway, Wilner, and I appreciate Wilner. I think he fully understands where things are at right now. And you're right. I mean, I think you make a great point about the wording that's being used, the relegation versus the poaching versus the, stop already.
Yeah.
Just, and I'm a Mountain West guy. I would more than be happy to welcome the Beavs and the Cougs into the conference. Call it whatever you want.
Yep.
It's still the same damn conference. You added 2 decent schools.
When we talked about the PAC months ago, when all this was breaking down, I brought up, and again, I like to revisit themes. I think it's the 12 stages of grief.
Yes.
And one of them is acceptance, and some people get to acceptance sooner than others.
There's acceptance happening right now, for sure, no doubt about it. So anyway, hey, I just wanted to kind of pull that in. I know it's a theme that we've been repeating, but when I heard Wilner chime in and was like, no, it's likely, and he was like super, he wasn't 100%, but he's like, no, that's what's going to happen. I went, yeah, we agree.
There's no viable solution for the remaining 2 assuming they don't get an invite from the Big 12 or the ACC.
Right.
It's not happening with the Big 10 or the SEC. I mean, I'm a Beaver believer. I love them, but they're not getting an invite to the Big 10 or the SEC.
No.
So assuming if they don't get an invite in the next 2 years to the Big 12 or the ACC, there's no other viable paths really to continue. I don't think either one has that brand recognition and just the strength to be independents long term.
Right.
And I people will get to that stage of acceptance on their own time.
For sure. And to me, I think the Big 12 ship has sailed. I know it's 2 years worth of waiting. I don't see anything happening. Depending on what happens with the ACC, which is not going to be this year.
Right.
It's not going to be 2024. Ain't going to happen. and until whatever happens,
Yep.
and that fallout occurs, to me, if I'm the Big 12, I'm waiting to see what happens there, because maybe there's some brands that are closer to the Big 12 schools than having to go up into the Northwest. So the ship kind of already sailed. If they wanted the Bees and the Cougs, they already could have had them. They passed on them. The ACC passed on them. And until the ACC debacle happens, and it could be minor, one school leaving, whoop-de-doo, or two, or it could be a complete just blow up of the whole daggone conference, I think everybody's in a sit and wait mode right now, and that doesn't help the Bees and Cougs because they're looking for a home. So,
but what does help them is having that scheduling agreement. I think it's so
huge.
Great for both sides.
It is,
really is.
sure.
And I think as we get into, let's say, November, December, January, I think there's going to be even more acceptance of the new reality.
Sure.
All sides are going to see how well this worked and the great games that they had this year.
Yeah.
And we'll be in a different position at that time.
I'm anxious for the games. I've said it before. I'm saying it again. I am anxious for the games. So, hey, with that, we thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.